Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops.
And Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And yes, we are late this morning. This was on me. I had some research I got down a rabbit hole, and I was just like, I got to finish this because if not, it would have been in the back of my mind the entire episode. I wanted to fully focus on our Detroit Pistons content here for the next hour. We are always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. Make sure you are listening to him and Blake Silverman on the Pin Down over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. Obviously, make sure you are reading everything O2 is putting out over on the Detroit Free Press. And please go subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack, which is absolutely free for all of the content I am putting out over there. We got a lot to get into today. We've seen some games. We have the trade deadline is officially over, and we can talk all of the fallout and everything that came from that. But real quick, O2, where will you be watching the Super Bowl tonight? What will your setup be? And do you have any sort of rooting interest for this whatsoever?
Yeah, not really. Actually, I booked my flight to Charlotte. It's like a 7:45 p.m. flight, so I'm just going to watch some of it before the flight. Most of the rest of it probably on the flight. My only rooting interest is Kenneth Walker Jr., being a Michigan State guy, delivering the best running back season I've seen from any team I've had rooting interest for in college. So it'll be cool to see the Seahawks win because of that. But more so just want to see him have a good game. Beyond that, I don't really care. And I was actually going to move my flight up today to make room for the Super Bowl. And when I got in the app, I was just like, you know what? I actually don't care. I'd actually rather just stay home for a bit and not go to Charlotte early just to watch the Super Bowl I don't care about. So that's just a long-winded way of saying I really don't care. I'm perfectly cool catching the highlights for this one.
I probably will not watch. So I've been thinking about this, and this is truth, guys. Like, even when the Chiefs have been in the Super Bowl, I just think the Super Bowl is the worst watch. Like, for sporting events, it takes forever. There's constant commercials. The halftime show is like 45 minutes, and listen, I know the halftime show, this is no other sort of message here whatsoever. Just in general, the one halftime show I liked was the one where they brought back all the 2000s rappers. Like, it was like 50 Cent and Eminem, and they got all of them back. That was the only one I liked. But I probably won't watch anything whatsoever tonight. I will catch up on NBA games or college basketball games, NBA draft, whatever. This isn't even like a shot at the NFL. The more I think about it, just from an actual sports watching perspective, O2, the NFL Super Bowl it's impossible to watch because you get so little actual football sport content compared to all of the other stuff that for me, I don't have any interest in. Obviously it works and they get a bunch of viewers, like they know what they're doing, but just for me and how I want to consume sports, it's just not a very good watch for me.
Yeah, it's too long. They drag it out. I realized I don't care about the commercials as much anymore. Like I used to be entertained by them, and I don't know if I just find them less funny or exactly what it is. But I feel like for you probably need your Chiefs to be in it to really, really care. For me, definitely need the Lions.
And to be clear, really, really I hated it more when the Chiefs were in it because I would have to wait 2 hours into the game before I could start it because there was so much for me to fast forward through to just watch the actual game. So I disliked it even more when the Chiefs were in it because it's not a good watch as someone who just wants to watch the game.
Yeah, and it goes on so long. Honestly, by the time I get to Charlotte, I 9:45 or whatever, I'll still probably be able to catch the fourth quarter. So, long story short, I think we are aligned. I actually think this podcast is going to be more entertaining than the Super Bowl tonight. So I'll just put that out there.
I'm going to pick a very random and unbiased comment. YouTube user says, Bryce is my favorite NBA content creator by a pretty large margin. The fact that he chose the Pistons as his NBA team might make me a little biased. I don't think you are, just like I wasn't there with that comment that I chose to read. All right, let's talk Detroit Pistons stuff. O2. Okay, first, actually, I want to do this real quick because I told this story on Game Theory and it got a little bit of reaction, and I want to tell it here because I think this probably is better. I got a chance to go to the game in Denver, right? You and I got to meet up. We always enjoy that. Appreciate the hotel room. We didn't even talk the next morning. I left before you ever woke up. I won't sell you out with what we talked about, but I want to say this about Isaiah Stewart. Because whenever I get to go to these games, I get to be around on the court before the game, after the game, all of that. That dude might be the nicest person I've ever seen in my life. God's honest truth, guys. And I'm just waiting in the hallway after the game. All sorts of players are walking by. You're doing your media in the locker room, whatever. That dude on the road has no idea who these Nuggets workers are, right? These ball arena workers are. I swear he told every single one of them either thank you or have a good night or whatever. And I'm not out here trying to push an Isaiah Stewart narrative, but I do think that there's the wider range of NBA fans, all they remember is the LeBron James bloody face, chase him around the court stuff. And it's just like these guys, Stu is like exactly what we want, right? We want our professional athletes to be ultimate competitors between the lines. And I realize he's been a competitor outside of the lines at times. Drew Eubanks may disagree with me here, but that dude is truly so nice. And it's not just him, right? We watch Cade interact with fans, and I watched him like pick out a kid in the stands and let him come over and take a picture and all of that. But it just really stood out to me just how nice all of these guys are, and Stu especially, as he was walking out of the arena that night. I don't know. Those are the things that stand out to me, and what is cool about some of the opportunities I get when I get to come play media for a game during the middle of the season.
Yeah, no, Stu is like the nicest guy. Like I tell people all the time, if you had no context of some of his on-court run-ins and all that stuff, like you would just think he's just a really nice, really passionate dude. Like always respectful, always goes out of his way to greet you, say hi. Like even pre-game, he came over and dapped you up on the Nuggets floor. Super respectful to all the workers in whatever arena. Just an all-around great dude. Like genuinely, like Beef Stew on the court and Beef Stew off the court are two different people. You do not want to be wearing the other jersey when you're on the court with him. You want to be wearing the same jersey by far. But off the court, great dude. I tell people all the time, you would not believe how nice and respectful he is, and how much he goes out of his way to make sure people feel welcome.
Yeah, and listen, there are other players as well, right? Like again, like I'm always blown away by the energy Cade gives to the fans, and like before the game, when he's preparing to play a game, and other guys, I just thought Stu was the example of that from this last game that I went to. I'm not saying every NBA player is the best person in the world or whatever. There's obviously some not good ones, and some that have made some real mistakes off the court. I just thought it was a good opportunity to highlight that at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are still just good people and good humans and all of that. Okay, enough with that. I just wanted to get that story real quick. Speaking of the big man in Detroit, Jalen Duren, not in the dunk contest. He left that game against the Wizards. What a game against the Wizards that was. Early, we didn't see him against the Knicks. That was a much better game. Just a quick update specifically on Jalen Duren, where the knee's at. We only got a couple more games till this team gets a week off, in totality. But I think we are all excited to see him in the All-Star game, let alone the dunk contest. So any updates on Jalen Duren?
Yeah, no updates at this point. He was questionable, before he was ruled out of the last game. So, that implies that it's not a situation where they're just like, we have to shut him down. Not in the dunk contest. It initially was reported by ESPN that he would be. I asked some questions online about how much the knee factors into that. But I think that news came out last Monday. And in the locker room after the game, I was kind of joking with Duren, like, are you going to do this dunk or jump over whoever? And he was like, did you hear you're going to be in the dunk contest for me, or did you hear it from Shams? And I was like, okay, touche. And and then news came out that he actually wasn't in it. So I don't know if wires got crossed. Like I don't know exactly why it was reported that he was in it, and then he ended up not being in it because he played that Nuggets game at the LCA, and then after the locker room, basically was like, I didn't report that, and he was kind of cagey on if he would do it or not. So I say that to say I don't know. I don't think it's just because of the injury. I think whatever went into the dunk contest decision. I think that was before the D became an issue for him because he left halfway through the following game. So we won't have an update on him until like later tonight when there is a injury report update. We'll see. I mean, two tough games this week. Charlotte's won like 8 or 9 straight. Toronto's been good all season, so they could definitely use them. But we'll probably have a little bit more clarity on that tonight or tomorrow morning.
All right, let's talk about these games. The most recent ones are the Wizards and the Knicks. Kind of complete opposite games that we got. Thursday was just such an interesting day because I know that some Pistons fans didn't love what happened at the deadline. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. Jaden Ivey out, Kevin Huerter in, the pick swap, where Dario Saric falls into trade exceptions and biannual exceptions and all of that. But let's just talk about those two games real quick. I think the Wizards game, I'm not excusing it. I don't think it is excusable, but it just seemed like a team that wasn't focused, didn't have the right energy and all of that. Like, what made that game really bad, O2? Washington didn't even try to win. So, some of those players didn't even play the whole game, like an Alex Sarr and those type of guys. It was Will Riley, scoring a bunch of points. So, that game, is there anything else to take away from that other than if you don't show up, any NBA team, tanking or otherwise, is still good enough to beat you if you're not focused and ready to play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just pretty much that. Any team could have a great night and bury you if you're not prepared to play. Will Riley and Vucevic, two guys that I knew little to nothing about before that game, to be honest. I don't know how much Will Riley and Vucevic I watched, came in and just hit some ridiculous shots, especially down the stretch to help the Wizards stay in control. I asked JB about it, and he just, kind of talked about, obviously, trade deadline. You had a win over the Nuggets. You have the Knicks at the end of the week, and it just had trap game energy, I think. They clearly just didn't come out with the right energy. And that's just over the course of 82 games. Like, that's just going to happen. I remember watching Killian Hayes put up 32 against Dallas or 30-something against Dallas a few years ago, and he's going shot for shot with Luka at the end of the game. Like, over 82 games, you're just going to catch guys on certain nights, and that's just kind of how it goes. After the game, I was pretty certain, like, that's not anything. This isn't a loss that's indicative of anything other than them just having a bad night. And then they came back and absolutely demolished the New York Knicks the following night, which was closer to, what we expected them to do to the Wizards, So just an off night. Like, the Wizards did what they had to do to win. Bilal Coulibaly hit like this crazy 3 at the end when the Pistons made a push, and just one of those nights. You're going to have some bad losses. That was probably only the maybe third or fourth, I think, truly bad loss they've had this season, if that many. So just a bad night.
And then they come back, as you mentioned, back to back. They play the Knicks. I was a little disappointed in this. We didn't get Jalen Duren for the Pistons. We didn't get OG or Karl Anthony Towns for the Knicks. So not the full rosters for either team that I was hoping for in this matchup. Any takeaways from that game? I mean, the leading Pistons scorer in a blowout win was Daniss Jenkins with 18, but you had Tobias with 15, Stu with 15. I mean, the starters only had Cade played 22 minutes. I think that's kind of all you need to know. Any takeaways from that game? I don't feel like we got in. I will say this. Here was probably my biggest takeaway was actually Ausar Thompson's defense. Like, the way he defended in that game, the way he defended Jalen Brunson. He even got an early foul and then still was able to not get the second one, stay on the court, and continue to make his life really, really tough. I feel like Mikal Bridges was probably the best offensive player for the Knicks in that game. It was a really right night for Jalen Brunson as Ausar continues to make his first team all defense campaign.
Yeah, it feels like Asar has really found that right balance of not giving Brunson any room to operate while also not falling for his tricks and jumping into his pump fakes and things like that. You could tell he watched that 6 game series and rewatched every play where Brunson got the better of him, probably a billion times each. And that was probably one of the finest defensive performances, we've seen against Brunson from any player, period. For him to just shoot 4 for 20 overall. I think he had like 5 points at halftime, like 12 for the night or something like that. Ron did a great job too. But yeah, that's my big takeaway from the game. It's just that AT had a first team all defensive performance. Obviously, New York was a bit shorthanded as well. So with Brunson not being able to get a clean shot off, like I think the Pistons were up 10 or 11 at the end of the first, and like it just snowballed from there. Like they were up 20 at halftime, 40 by the fourth quarter. Like just from start to finish, they never took their foot off of the gas, but a lot of that did start on defense for them. Yeah, Ausar, absolutely insane defender. He had a few plays in that game that were just like that top percentile. Only he could do this type play. I think he blocked that 3-pointer in the corner from Shamet, like just rotated and just timed it perfectly, blocks it with his left hand. Just all sorts of crazy plays. That was certainly, I think, one of my favorite Ausar performances on defense this season.
So I see some comments about like Ausar for DPOY. I think right now he is solidly a first team all defense guy based on his performances and where the Pistons are at as a team in terms of defensive rating. This is the first time I've looked where they are actually closer to Oklahoma City than the Spurs or whoever is in third is to them. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but man, like that was not the case at one point. Like at one point, Oklahoma City was so far in first in defensive rating that you had to go from like second to 11th or something like that. So they're only 2.5 in defensive rating behind the Thunder, and they are 3.7 above the Spurs in terms of defensive rating. And the reason I bring that up, like all Pistons fans know how good they are defensively. Detroit has very aggressively staked their claim as the second best defensive team in the NBA. And I bring this up because I think that's how you get to an all defense or a DPOY result for Ausar Thompson is you have to be that good. You can't, my struggle with some guy, like you can't be in 10th in defensive rating. So like, I'll say this, there's a lot of Rudy Gobert talk recently. The Timberwolves are 10th in defensive rating, significantly behind the Thunder. I have a hard time putting him as DPOY over a Chet Holmgren, who's, on the best defensive team in the NBA. But when that margin isn't as much, like it isn't right now between the Thunder and the Pistons, I think that's where, at least for me, all of a sudden you can start to get Ausar Thompson in those conversations. And I will backtrack something I've said. I think Ausar Thompson is better than Amin Thompson defensively. I think he has not only closed that gap, I think he has exceeded Amin on the defensive end based off what I thought last year. Amin was better. I think this year Ausar is better defensively. That doesn't mean, listen, Amin is still better than him offensively. I do think Ausar has been better recently on the offensive end. And for me, that has somewhat coincided with less on-ball reps and more just leaning into off-the-ball stampede attacks, cutting on the baseline, and those type of things.
Yeah, the thing about Ausar on offense is that you don't want him thinking. You just want him playing and reacting. And I think he's looked a lot better in that capacity as well. I agree. I think Ausar is better defensively than Amin. I think Amin is better offensively. And I don't think Amin is overrated offensively, but because both of them can't shoot, they're still sort of like, I think this hard ceiling Amin could hit on some nights just as pure offensive impact. So they're not the same player; they're different players. But it's been fun to see how they've both kind of carved out their own niche within the league with their own unique roles. And back to the Pistons defensive rating, OKC came out and started the season on like a historic pace, and
Yeah.
like they fizzled since. And since December 1st, the Pistons have been the number one defense.
Okay, I
So
was gonna wonder. I was wondering how far back you could go to have them as number one.
so you're looking at a pretty big portion of the season where they've been number one. Which by the end of the year, if that continues, I don't know if they surpass OKC, but they may whittle that gap down to 2 points, 1.5. It seems like those two teams are kind of in their own tier defensively, and then you have San Antonio number 3 maybe, and like from there it's just a fall off. The Pistons have been absolutely suffocating defensively, for 2/3 of the season now.
Yeah. Somebody asked what the defensive rating of the 03-04 Pistons were. Like, it's kind of funny to look at this stuff because
Yeah, they were scoring like 80 points or something.
yeah, this year's team. So the Thunder are at 105.9, the Pistons are at 108.4, and those are by far the two best teams in defensive rating. I mean, the Pistons weren't even the best defensive rating team in 03-04. It was actually the Spurs, but they were 93.9. I mean, the worst team in that season was 108.8 in defensive rating. So just kind of funny. Let's go to break here. When we come back, I do think we need to talk Daniss Jenkins. I was going to transition into that earlier, but I think he's a very important person to talk about, not just in the rotation, his play, all of those things, but a move. I shouldn't say decision. People get mad at me whenever I say decision, but a move has to be made before we see Daniss Jenkins play for the Detroit Pistons again. And so I think it's important to talk about that as well.
All right, we are back with segment 2. I want to read this quote from Daniss from the last game before we get into talking about him, because I asked him when he knew that he was an NBA caliber player. And this was just like the most hard anime protagonist quote ever. Hold on, let me see. It burns. He said it burns. Yeah, if I'm being honest, and everyone knows I'm a very humble guy, but in college, most of these dudes that got drafted, what was the difference between me and them? What? You tell me. What was the difference? For me, going undrafted is insanity to me, literally insanity. And that burns inside of me every single day. And then he went on to say he knew from his first summer league game that he was an NBA player, which I believe either his first game or that first breakout game he had, he outplayed Reed Shepherd, who was the 3rd overall pick that year. So, it's just been cool to see Daniss get to this point because he's had that confidence and flair and everything essentially since that point. But to see the way he's impacting games now, he is just so far beyond a two-way player. He is a genuine NBA rotation guard and may even be a little bit better than that. He's just become such a key part of the Pistons season. And like you said, they're going to have to get him on a standard contract here soon because he literally is out of two-way eligibility. And he might have earned himself more money than he would have gotten otherwise, just because it's so apparent that this team needs him to win games.
So, Wes, real quick, we have a new notes tab over here that I did not realize. So trying to work through technology, but Wes, back to the defensive rating question.
Okay. I didn't notice that. Sorry. Yeah,
I
nice.
know. I was looking in the Google Doc and then all of a sudden I saw the notes tab. I was like, okay, this is cool. So Detroit Pistons top seasons in defensive rating relative to league average in franchise history. So this is much better of a question or answer, I guess, to Kyle's question. 03-04, it was negative 7.5. So that's obviously a positive, right? There was 7.5 better than league average. 25-26, negative 6.2. 04-05, negative 4.9. 89-90, negative 4.6. 07-08, negative 4.6. Essentially, what those numbers speak to me is that 03-04 defense was absolutely insane, historically good. And this 25-26 defense still isn't half bad whenever you consider, to me, that is a different tier. And this is from Keith Black Trudeau, who I assume put that out on Twitter or something like that, Wes. Yeah. So really good numbers from Keith Black Trudeau there. Daniss. So I text Keith Smith this morning. I said, I want to know, what is the situation? We all know he's going to end up on the 15-man roster, right? And I think we all kind of know how that's going to happen with Dario Saric. I wanted to kind of understand what are the options here. And so they could sign him with the biannual exception. So there is there's the minimum, right, that he could get. This is what Dylan Cardwell, I think, just signed with the Sacramento Kings, and he did multiple years. My guess with Daniss is he knows he's played so well and has been so good. He doesn't want to sign a multi-year contract. Daniss wants to hit free agency this summer and go get something more than the minimum. And so I only throw the biannual exception out there just to say that it is possible for the Pistons to use that.
And that's around 2.5 million, right?
No, the biannual's the $4 or $5 million one.
4 or 5 million. That's right. Yeah,
that's the one that got confused that Saric may have came into at the deadline. That
he was just over that. Yeah, it was it's around 5 million.
Yeah, Saric was over the biannual exception, which was why Saric had to eat into the trade exception from Dennis Schroeder. But so they do still have the biannual exception that they could use, according to Keith, they could use if they wanted. I think ultimately what this is about is, I would guess the Pistons want a little bit more control, but Jenkins just wants to get to free agency. And I did ask about bird rights in these situations, and Daniss Jenkins, the Pistons would have early bird rights on him, which is 175%. That number doesn't matter in this case. Early bird rights also allows you 105% of a league average contract, which my guess is 13 to 15 million, something like that. Point being that the Pistons can offer Daniss Jenkins. Yeah. So Kyle says 4 for 66. So I assume that's whatever the 105 would be, and with whatever raises 5%, 8%, whatever it allows. So my whole point here is Detroit will have the avenue and the path with his early bird rights to, sign him this summer, keep him on the roster, all of that. I just wonder if some of this maneuvering right now is Detroit. Maybe a lot of times you see these two-way guys get converted to standard contracts, Omari, and it's a rookie min or whatever. And there's a couple years tacked onto it. And I think with Daniss, he's saying, no, I'll bet on myself. I will hit free agency this summer.
Yeah, I mean, which I think is the right move for him, just from a securing your NBA future standpoint, because now you have leverage. I think this is the rare case of a two-way contract kind of working out for a guy from the standpoint of, because you have that 50-game eligibility, which they have used up, you are now essentially locked out of utilizing your best backup point guard, until you get him signed, right? And he's earned, I think, more than the minimum. He's earned more than whatever else he was going to get. We'll see what that number ends up looking like, years, all of that. But yeah, I mean, he's just been good. I think in a season with so many fun stories, he still ranks toward the top. I think he's the first guy from the Motor City Cruise who has really kind of taken that opportunity and turned it into something special. And he just plays with so much flair. He's just so fun to watch. The way he could just kind of catch defenders off balance and transition or going downhill with just those subtle shifts. The way he reads the floor, he's shooting the three really well. Just does a lot for this team. He's been a huge part of why their bench unit works as well as it has. I think they outscored the Knicks bench 66-36 the other night. Yeah, he just checks so many boxes for this team. It'll be interesting to see exactly what that deal looks like and how Daniss friendly it is versus team friendly for the Pistons, which obviously the Pistons will like something a bit more team friendly, but we'll see how that works out.
Somebody asked it, restricted free agent. So yes, restricted free agent. And we all know that restricted free agency can play out much differently than unrestricted free agency because it ties money up and all of that. This isn't going to be a massive contract depending on, I guess it could be. The numbers that Kyle's thrown out here, the 4 years, almost $60 million. That's definitely not a nothing contract. I don't know that that's what he's going to get, but we'll see. I guess some of that depends on how the rest of the year goes and into the playoffs. I do want to talk about just him on the court and what he means to this team, because it does seem like he is, part of this rotation now, right? I think where that really stands out to me is he gets the non-Cade minutes in the fourth quarter. Like, he's playing a lot of time, Omari, but he goes on the court when Cade takes that, even though it's only 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever. Cade always takes that little break. It always makes me a little nervous that this is how they stagger his minutes, but he takes that little break in the middle of the fourth quarter, and Daniss is getting those minutes. And so I just, he's the only other, definitely now, he's the only other true point guard on this team. He's the second best creator with the ball in his hands on this team. And so I think he has a vital role moving forward. I'm here for it. We'll see how it looks in the playoffs, but I am all about it. And I do, yes, he's also, yes, great point from YouTube user. He also stays on the court with Cade at times as well in the fourth quarter. So I think what it comes down to with him is his confidence. And you kind of mentioned that. Obviously, the quote you gave really, shows that. I just do want to give some numbers from Synergy. He is 58% on unguarded catch and shoot threes this year, guys. He's 48% just on all catch and shoot threes. So that is a huge number right there. When we talk about floor spacing, that is a massive, massive number when you talk about playing next to Cade Cunningham. I will highlight he is 28% on 3-point dribble jumpers and 40% on 2-point dribble jumpers. He goes to that mid-range jumper a lot, so it'll be interesting to see where that lands. And he is just 4 of 22 on runners or floaters. So I just, listen, I'm not trying to disparage, or whatever. I'm just trying to give the facts, because here's one thing. If he is in the 9, 10, whatever, 11 man, whatever the playoff rotation is, a lot of this stuff will be very important. I think the thing I like about him the most is his ability to manipulate ball screens, create for people, stuff like that. So, I hope he ends up being good enough to be a starter next to Cade Cunningham. I don't know that I'm there yet, but he absolutely is part of this rotation right now.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. He has. It's funny because coming into the season, we were aware that Daniss being like a rotation guy was a possibility. Especially after this past summer league, it's like at the very least you have to give him a shot. But I don't know if I would have predicted that he would be active for 50 of the first 51 games. Not just active, but like playing and all, but maybe like 8 of those, right? With like 5 or 6 starts. He's just exceeded all expectations. The fact that he could play next to Cade as well as back him up is an obviously great plus. And I did also just want to touch on this really quickly. I think it was Michael. I can't find the comment now. Somebody mentioned that they might have been they might have been a little aggressive listing him at 6'4". So during that Knicks game, I actually had that same thought because he was standing next to Josh Hart, who also is listed at 6'4". And it's very clear that somebody's lying about that 6'4". Both of those guys are not 6'4". There's a little bit of a height difference there. But even if Daniss isn't quite 6'4", he's not to be a small guard. He's got some length. Defensively, he gets after it. I don't know if he's 6'4", but I don't think he plays like a small guard either, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, listen, I'm cool. If people want to say he's going to be the Brunson, the better comparison or idea is, he's nowhere near this player. Well, he's also nowhere near Brunson. So if we're throwing these names out, let's just stay with it. But I thought Kyrie Irving was a great fit next to Luka Doncic in Dallas. So if people think that Daniss is that type of player, then yeah, he's going to be his archetype fits next to Cade. I will say that because I'm listed the catch and shoot ability. And so him being able to play off of Cade makes sense. Cade's size allows for this kind of versatility in terms of lineups. And then he is also a good secondary ball handler or primary ball handler. For me, I will wait on he's Kyrie Irving, he's Jalen Brunson, he's the second, backcourt running mate to Cade Cunningham until we get a little bit bigger of a sample. But no, if other people want to go that far with it, cool. I love it. I'm definitely Grinchy. Harry says, I love how Grinchy Bryce can be at times about certain things. I love it how it isn't just peanuts. Oh, I am definitely the Grinch around here. So, can Jenkins archetype be okay? I like this. This I think is a more, I don't want to say reasonable, but like Mr. Ray brings up Andrew Nembhard. I love that. Like that now Andrew Nembhard is like bigger. Like I feel like Nembhard is like stronger, but that is a very interesting idea of a player who I think is very valuable to the Pacers and plays off their primary initiator really well. I love that, Mr. Ray. Like that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, that's not a bad comparison at all. I think Nembhard's one of the craftiest defenders in the league. I wouldn't quite put Daniss on that level, but I do see some similarities in like how they can attack offensively, like you said, off of a primary guy.
I did miss it. The Peanuts thing was the Charlie Brown or something. Yeah. I thought he just like I thought the person just messed up. Like, oh my gosh. I thought they just messed up the analogy. I thought they meant to say like, Bryce isn't always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes he's a Grinch. No, they purposely put peanuts. Okay, my bad. I'm the worst.
The fact that you've never seen a Charlie Brown special is still insane. Like that, like talking about insanity, like that is insanity that you've never seen a Charlie Brown special. That blows my mind. Honestly, it does. We don't have to go off on a tangent, but that is truly crazy. You got to get on Apple TV or something to watch that Christmas special, man.
I'm good. All right. Let's talk the trade a little bit, and then we have a bunch of questions. And I don't know, we may have touched on some of them already.
We should get into Herder, Ivy probably a little bit because I know people still have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, and so Slim, I hope you're still here, my guy. Please stay. We will get to your super chat first after we get into this. So, all right, the trade. Herder comes to Detroit. We get Dario Saric comes to Detroit into part of the trade exception. They get the Minnesota pick swap. Jaden Ivey goes to Chicago. That's kind of the gist of it for the Pistons. Okay, Slim, you're still here. Yes, stay here. I promise we'll get to yours first after we get through this. Just any thoughts now that we've had a few more days to digest things? I don't know that we've seen enough of Kevin Herter to like have any changing thoughts on that, but anything based different than what we talked about for 30 minutes Wednesday morning?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily about Herter or Ivy as players as much. I think for a lot of fans, they kind of view the trade as like at best a lateral move because Herter comes in and it's like, yeah, he could shoot and finish at the rim and play off Cade and this and that. And then people are like, well, Ivy can do those things. Why wouldn't you just keep Ivy? But he supposedly has more upside. And I think there's like two different parts to that. I think there's a misconception on what Ivy's strengths were. And I think there is a misconception on what Herter's strengths are, because you look at Herter's statistical profile, he is a 3-level scorer. Like his rim finishing has been elite for like 5 years in a row now. He can shoot from mid range. The 3-point shooting obviously has slumped, but I mean, the guy's been a shooter his whole life. It's just hard for me to imagine that in the middle of his prime, he's just forgotten how to knock down 3-pointers. I think that will bounce back, but he's not a bad defender. He's not a bad athlete. You look at his steal and blocks numbers. He's had some seasons where those have really popped. Which I'm sure that's very based on Rowe, but I think it undersells him to just say he comes in and he's just like a shooter. I think he comes in and for a team that's their offense has largely been propped by offensive rebounding and fast break opportunities, which is to say it's just very size and defense reliant. Like I think Herter opens up different dynamics offensively, and I think along with that, just the runway J.I. needed. I think not just from a play standpoint, but from a career standpoint, does it make sense for him to come off the bench for 16 minutes, have an unguaranteed playoff role when you're about to hit restricted free agency, right? So, he's starting for Chicago, which, this is just my opinion, but I think that's a better situation for him from you're trying to get your career back on track standpoint, like you're trying to get paid and, secure your immediate NBA future, which, like, I don't think that Detroit could provide that for him. And I'm not saying this is like the greatest trade in the world. I'm not even saying that I think this trade is going to definitively help the Pistons this season or increase the margins of their success significantly. I just think that there's a misconception on what Ivy brought, what Herter brought, and like just watching the last 13 months, what this Pistons team actually needs. So we could get into that like more in segment 3, but yeah, I'm surprised a little bit by some of the reaction to the trade, and I also recognize that Ivy's a guy that was drafted 5th, and he has a lot of fans, and there's always going to be a tough process when a guy like that gets traded. Like I know when Sadiq got traded, a lot of people were sad too, so I also understand that.
All right, let's go to break. I want to give some thoughts on Herter, and then we'll give some final, thoughts on Jaden Ivey, his time here, moving on, all of that, and then we'll get to the questions. But we'll get into all of that right after this.
All right, let's get into segment 3. Bryce, we didn't talk about Herter as much in our pre-deadline episode. Just what do you like about his game? What do you think the Pistons are getting from him? Particularly in ways that they don't currently have on their bench.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to the 3-point shooting, right? Like you kind of talked about it, and if he shoots 38 to 42% throughout the rest of the season and through the playoffs, it's going to end up like a really good move. And if he's still at 30% like he was, during his time in Chicago this year, it's going to be a little bit frustrating. I agree with everything you said with him as a player in terms of he is more than just a 3-point shooter though, right? Like he is able to attack off the bounce a little bit. I know his garbage minutes the other night against the Knicks, but we even saw him like with the kind of the wraparound backdoor cut and the finish. He has a little bit of size to him, which helps whenever you're talking about lineup constructions and all of that. That's probably something we can get into next week whenever we won't have as many games to talk about. And, because of the All-Star break. But for me, that's what it's about. And Brady from Detroit Bad Boys brought up a really good point. I thought this was really smart for him to look at these numbers specifically. And you can go see these on B-Ball Reference. But he is still 41% for his career from the corners. And I think that was an important thing, to be pointed out. Even if you go back, so I just... if he can do that, I think Pistons fans are going to be perfectly fine with what he's bringing to the team. If he's not able to, then it's going to be a little bit of an issue. I think defensively, he's probably a little better than Duncan Robinson, but not that much better. I had my questions about Jaden Ivey's defense and whether it was improving or growing. Obviously, J.I. is a much better athlete, but I don't know how much that was showing itself on the defensive end. My hardest thing to deal with Jaden Ivey is like he's just coming off the injury. Like there's got to be a little bit of, what's it going to look like next season whenever he's been able to fully recover from that. And I don't love trading Jaden Ivey for something that is just going to be a 1-year thing, a half a year thing with Kevin Herter. I wasn't anti-trading Jaden Ivey. I liked it more if it was part of a bigger package for a more impactful piece than what I think Kevin Herter is going to be. I think Kevin Herter could play a role on this team. I also think there's a world where Herter gets very limited minutes in the playoffs, right? Like I could roll out a 9-man rotation right now where Herter isn't part of it. And so I think that's where the value thing comes into play a little bit. And then it comes down to how much you value Herter is definitely winning the nickname game, though. That is very true. It also comes down to how much that pick swap ends up mattering. Could be a lot. It could be very, very little. And so that is an aspect of this as well. I brought up the idea of, let's say the Timberwolves are at 22, right? And you go from 29 to 22. Well, that makes it a little bit easier to go up to 15, right? If somebody's there at 15 or 16 or something like that. So we'll see what comes from that as well. So just some of the nicknames on B-Ball Reference: Red Mamba, Red Velvet, Headband Herter, Cave. So I think people like the Red Velvet and the Red Mamba stuff for him. They think those are funny. So Blog Piston says Cameron Carr. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, like this probably isn't a trade either way that is going to massively swing outcomes this season, unless Herter really begins to knock down shots and really find some synergy, with lineups as far as how he could impact with his passing and everything else. You mentioned the corner shooting, like he's still like 39% on corner threes this year. Uh, like he takes a lot more shots from the wing than he does from the corners, but if the Pistons utilize him in the corners, like which you always need that. Uh, I think if his shot profile changes a bit, that could help his percentages. And it's not like he can't shoot from the wing; he's just a lot better in the quarters. But I also think a lot of the argument for them keeping Ji is like this is the worst of Ji that we're going to see. Like there's this theory that as Ji gets better over the course of the season, you essentially so low on him now when he could play himself into a bigger role. And I'm not saying that that can't happen, but I think that ignores what we've seen over the last 13 months, right? We watched this team win for a calendar year with Ji either injured or playing a small role off the bench. They've been on a 60-win pace this season with Ji either sidelined or coming off of the bench. So I guess to that point, I say, well, if Ji is a guy that is going to unlock some element in this team that they didn't previously have, what is that element? You could say shooting, and Ji has shot the ball pretty well over the last 2 seasons. I don't know if that just means I inherently trust that his shot is better than Herter's shot. I think Herter, his volume of work is still greater in that area. So if it's just pure spacing, I don't know if I agree with basically 50 games or 60 games of Jaden Ivey against Herter's entire career. But Ivy, even his breakout season was largely propped up by his outside shooting. He's always been around average finishing at the rim. He's a superior athlete to Herter, but Herter actually finishes at the rim better than Ji has. And I think from a passing standpoint, they're pretty similar, but Herter turns the ball over a lot less as well. Defensively, maybe it's a push. I guess that's just my question. For Ji, I think to carve out the role people say he would have required Ji to do some things that he just hadn't done. And part of that is impacting winning. And they've in this team, I think when it just really boiled down to it, they've won for 13 months, without Ji. You have to pay Duren, you have to pay Ausar, potentially Ron. You've already paid Cade. They have to re-extend Stu. Where's this money for Ji coming from? Where's this role for Ji coming from when you've got Daniss and Cade and Duncan Robinson? I think you just look at it from an overall value, like what are we getting from this spot standpoint? And I just think the ground just kind of shifted from underneath Ji, and it just turned into a situation where he could no longer showcase his gifts or really impact the team in the way that they needed to be impacted because his strengths are duplicated elsewhere. So I don't say that to tear Ji down or anything like that. That's never my intention or goal. And I agree from the standpoint of he's coming off an injury, so hypothetically he's only going to get better. I just don't know if him getting better also correlates directly with the Pistons winning more games because they're on a 61 pace. So that's my question. Like if they're already winning 60 games with Ji not playing in a small role, what exactly would he bring that his best self that they don't currently have? And I think that's just where I fall on it.
And my last thing on Ji is I do think the Bulls are a good opportunity in terms of style of play. I mean, they have like a plethora of guards right now, but I do think that will shake itself out a little bit. So for me this year, it's probably, I would listen to it's a wash. Like, I don't know that all of a sudden Ji was going to hit the playoffs and be this 20-point a game guy. I think Herter is going to be able to give you at least what you were going to get from Ji, maybe more, maybe it's a little bit less, whatever. I understand people who are like, well, then if it's not, even if you think it's a little bit of an upgrade this year, but it's not much for the future. Wes brought up at some point, we probably need to talk about Herter staying here longer term. I would like to see a few more games of him with Detroit before we start to talk about that too much, but I think it is an interesting aspect of it. I do think ultimately, and listen, I understand like the process of you drafted this guy at 5 and then the return you got for him isn't great. So I understand that fully, but I do wonder if this is just, you brought it up, all of the contract situations that are coming up. And it's like, hey, we got to invest our resources into the Jalen Duren situation this offseason, Ausar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart. We already talked about Daniss Jenkins earlier. So my final thing there is just, yeah, I mean, I had the Herder synergy numbers up, and I'll leave it at this, O2. 38% on unguarded catch and shoot threes this season, right? So we're talking about this season with Herder, even 38% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. That's all he needs to make in Detroit. He's 48% on mid-range jumpers. He's really efficient on the floaters he takes. And then to your point, 67% at the rim. And, doesn't necessarily look like a guy that's getting to the rim a lot, but he finds a way, in the same way Duncan Robinson finds a way to leverage his shooting to get into the paint and either hit a little floater or pass out, whatever. So we'll see how it plays out this season for him in the rotation. Which JI, nothing but the best moving forward. We got to get to these questions. We have a bunch of them here. So first and foremost, Slim, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, love your show, fellas. What up, though? Everybody is acting like this Herder trade is going to work. My thing is we have no backup if it doesn't. Am I missing something? No. I mean, we've talked about it here a little bit. If Herder continues to be a 30% three-point shooter or takes a slump from the corner or whatever, they were still back in the same position. And he definitely doesn't answer the question or potential issue of the perimeter number 2 scorer. So I think we kind of answered this a little bit, but for me, O2, my biggest question about the Pistons in the playoffs wasn't necessarily answered by this move. Could it answer it? Yes. Am I sold 100% that their floor spacing is going to be fine and their perimeter scoring is going to be fine in the playoffs? I am not sold on that from this move.
Yeah, like I said, it comes down to Herder knocking down shots again, which he just hasn't really done this season. Talking to Trajan at his press conference yesterday, Trajan sounded pretty confident that he's going to bring that spacing. I think some of that is just even beyond percentages. He's a guy with a reputation who's going to attract that strong shooting defensive reaction anyway, just because of his body of work. So maybe there's some improvement there. But yeah, I mean, you could look at the roster makeup of this team. He's basically slotting into the role J.I. was in, and J.I. was only playing about 16 minutes, right? So we have to see. Like, it just really comes down to how well, Herder gels with this team and knock down shots. But, I think a realistic outcome is also that it doesn't end up impacting a lot. And if it doesn't, you still have a team that's on a 60-win pace and has been the number 1 defense for more than 2 months now. But that is a potential outcome. It's possible that this trade ends up not amounting to much for the Pistons as far as actual on-court impact.
MBWell, thank you always for being here. Can you please explain how the Ivy trade was possible based on the salary disparities? So the way it's explained to me, essentially Ivy got traded for Herder, and then Saric came in a different move. This is how it works, right? Orders of operations. Each team, Keith Smith came on and explained all this stuff. You can kind of break these trades that get reported as one thing into ways that make it work. And Saric went into the trade exception that was created by the Dennis Schroeder thing this past offseason. So you don't have to take the Saric and Herder money up against Ivy. It was Saric into the trade exception and then Ivy essentially for Herder, and their salaries must have been close enough that was able to work with them straight up 1-for-1.
Yeah, they had some room under the cap to absorb Herder's salary, and then they had that trade exception that Saric fit into. So their trade exception's somewhere between 8.5 and 9 billion now. That's basically how it went. It's helped by the Pistons having a lot of guys who are still on pretty cheap contracts. They don't really have a lot of heavy salaries. So, but you do that, you can trade for a guy that's making more money and still be in decent shape. And they wouldn't have been able to make that trade and get Saric if it weren't for the trade exception, though. That's really what kind of greased the wheels, I guess, enough for the money to be able to work out.
Yeah. So Kyle said, based on just the salary matching aspect of it, they could bring back 18-ish for Ivy. I see a lot of conversation about cap space this offseason, guys. Maybe that's something we'll dive into a little bit more next week, with the All-Star break. I was actually looking at my cap sheet, which essentially I steal from Spotrac, but then it just allows me to manipulate stuff. And I think there are some paths to potential cap space, depending on, again, order of operations. Jalen Duren's cap hold is low enough that you could just hold on to that and then do that after the fact. I think to really do this, or you can follow Kyle. My bad, Kyle. I'm not giving you your due attention. Sorry. Is you would have to let go, like you would have to get rid of the cap hold of Tobias Harris. Like, just Tobias isn't coming back or whatever, which, is a whole other conversation. So we can definitely, potentially get into that one. All right. Michael says, 2 interesting decisions. Thank you, Michael, for always being here. Appreciate the support. Not getting a point guard or combo guard vet rental. Oh, sorry. 2 interesting decisions. Not getting a point guard or combo vet rental, not getting another insurance forward, but maybe Hurdle is versatile enough for 2. Okay. So 1, the point guard combo guard vet rental, I get it. I mean, I just think that they're just leaning into, right, the Daniss Jenkins, Karis LeVert. As much as everybody else hates him, I'm not as down on Karis LeVert as everybody else, but I'm the minority there. I think you're just leaning into that. I'm a little bit more in the insurance forward thing. So here's my question, O2. We always try to do like straight up line, but is the combination of Herter, Holland, Green, Ausar, Stewart, like Tobias, is that all enough at the 3 and 4 that they feel comfortable kind of piecing that together come playoff time?
I think so. I think the reality for them is, like, you could nitpick, we don't have enough here or there, but none of that's mattered in the grand scheme because, like, their defense has been so elite that, like, it's actually propped up their offense. Like, they still have like the 10th best offensive rating while maintaining the number 1 defense since December 1st, which, like I said, so much of that is propped up by their offensive rebounding and athleticism, and they create the most steals in the NBA. I think they create the most blocks, one of the best fast break attacks. Like, all that stuff generates offense for you. So I think when you have a team that's you have all these guys between 6'5" and 6'10" in your lineup, they just haven't really thought about it strictly by like, oh, we need a 4, we need a point guard or combo guard or whatever. I think they look at the roster, and the roster's gotten the job done. If you need more size, you can, plug in Beef Stew at the 4, AT's picking up the lead ball handler regardless of what position he's at. Like, they've just been fine. Like, I think you just look at the overall picture, and it's like, if we're on a 60-win pace, clearly this is not an issue we need to go out of our way to go fix. They are turnover prone a bit. I don't know what guard on the market you could have gotten to fix that. That's also like rotation caliber to the point to where he's eating into Daniss Jenkins' minutes, right? So some of that's just kind of living with what you have. But from a pure insurance standpoint, this is a deep team. Like, I just think from a depth standpoint in general, they don't have any super big obvious needs. And that's not to say their roster's perfect, but it's to say that you're not going to be good at everything. And what they're good at, they're pretty elite at. So why not allow that to continue to run and continue to lean into the things that are winning you games? So I think that's just their overall view on it. Like, you could argue they need those things, but they're on pace for 61 wins. So how much is it really hurting them, right? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't want people to have to listen to me drink my coffee or type whenever I'm talking to Wes in the chat. Let's talk some buyout market stuff here. Zach says, when does the buyout market end? So I think the date is March 1st. A player has to hit waivers. I don't think they have to have cleared waivers. I think maybe they do have to clear waivers. I always get that one confused. But March 1st is an important date. But the important thing to note is they only have to be on the 15-man roster by the end of the season to be eligible for the playoffs. So just in terms of that, a lot of it's happening right now. And then some other things. Do you think would cut anyone to make room for a specific buyout? I don't think they will. That's YouTube user. And then Aruna, any chance they release Bobby Klintman instead of Saric for insurance forward purposes? So I don't think that they would go Bobby over Saric. I just feel like Saric isn't really a useful NBA player right now. I don't know that either one. I don't think either one is is an NBA caliber player right now. I guess the argument is if you needed somebody in a pinch, Saric has at least done it. But if you want to buy it, here's the thing with the buyout market, guys. You have to release two guys now, because we've already talked about this. One of these guys has to go for Daniss. So if you want a Cam Thomas or Haywood Highsmith or whoever, then it is going to have to be, I mean, I think about the only other name people would really like to hear is a Bobby Klintman, right? I'm not saying people would like to hear that. I mean, I suppose Sasser could. Maybe that was a comment about something else. So just remember that you're going to have to, it's not just Saric, you're going to have to, get rid of somebody else as well if you want to get into this buyout market.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is just if you need to cut guys, you have options. In the grand scheme, I don't know how much it really matters which way you go. When I checked in on Saric, is he staying or what the case is, it was a TBD that I got back. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think in the grand scheme, these are both guys who, are not in the rotation. So you could probably make an argument either way. And I don't think it's going to impact the season too much one way or another.
Yeah, Sasser's probably he's probably guaranteed for next year already. Hit that option. So Klintman has less guaranteed money, I think so those would be your two options. Saric on the expiring. Essentially everybody else is in the rotation in some capacity. You just brought in Lanier. Klintman, I think, is the guy that has the least guaranteed money moving forward. Yeah, Kyle says he has that $5 million guaranteed already next year on his, where Bobby's contract is a little less. So, if you're moving Saric to add Jenkins, if you want somebody else on the buyout market, then you're looking at moving on from Bobby Klintman, which I know is a name that some fans have really liked. So, speaking of this, I think this is, YouTube user brings up, I don't think it's silly discuss, but with the Daniss conversation, there will be a two-way spot opened up. He brings up Duop Reith, who is out for the season, but you could bring in he mentioned a pre-agency. I love Duop Reith. Never really fully found his footing in Portland. I don't know that we need to throw out names here, Omari, but it is just something to mention that a two-way spot could be opened up with this. Mr.
Duop Reith is, and I was just going to say, he's played 3 years, and he is 29, so he doesn't really strike me as a two-way candidate, but he is a guy that I think is interesting and could help this team when healthy.
Mr. Ray says, I trust our defense versus Charlotte offense, but they are certainly becoming a formidable opponent. Charlotte's one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. And obviously this is a game coming up on Monday. This is a potential. Kyle brings up a good point real quick here. Wes threw it out as well. If they cut Bobby Klintman, they could bring him back on the two-way. So that would be some, roster configuration stuff there that they could maneuver. So a great point there from Kyle as we continue to give him his shout outs and love. Follow him on Twitter. I don't know. Charlotte's another team, O2, that they could see in the first round of the playoffs as well. I think that this Pistons defense, here's what I'll say. This will be a great test on Monday. Like we always talk about the Knicks matchup and the Celtics matchup and anything with the West or whatever. This Charlotte offense is good. And this will be a great test for the Pistons defense. And I am very excited for this game on Monday, again, as a potential first round primer for what Detroit could see in the first round of the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Charlotte turnaround has been fun because they were like a dark horse team for me. Like they have enough to make a play-in run if it clicks and guys mature the right way. Couldn't have predicted Kai Kadupa being this good as a rookie. I mean, if it weren't for Cooper Flagg, he'd probably be rookie of the year. But now Cooper wants to go have 3 or 4 straight 30-point games. But they're just a fun team. Like Charlotte has a lot of guys over the years that I've liked as players and prospects, whether it's Brandon Miller. I know Trey Man's getting some minutes from him. I've always liked Trey Man's game just as a bucket getter off the bench. I always thought LaMelo was a guy that could be in a winning situation with the right roster. He kind of had the doesn't impact winning reputation, but I mean, he's always been a great passer.
Diabate's a Michigan guy, right? Diabate,
yeah,
Michigan.
Diabate.
He's been really good for him at the center position.
Yeah, I mean, they've just got a bunch of guys who are fun. So it'll be a good test for the Pistons because it seems like Charlotte and the Pistons have had like a lot of close kind of testy games over the years anyway. I remember Stu and Nick Richards getting into it a couple years ago. I remember Kelly Oubre knocking down like 10 3-pointers. Like it's been some wacky games here and there, but yeah, this game tomorrow is probably going to be the most fun Pistons Hornets game since who knows when, maybe ever. They've been so much fun to watch.
I will say that these final 2 games before the All-Star break, I get a little bit lazy with the NBA actual games this time of year because you have the deadline and then the All-Star break's coming up and the rosters aren't full and all of those things. These are 2 really interesting matchups against teams who didn't do a ton at the deadline, Omari. And so assuming health for them, you should get quality matchups. I know Kobe White's not available for the Hornets. Apparently he has a calf thing or something like that. I think they got one of their second round picks back. They had to amend that trade a little bit. And then you get the Raptors. So I'm just saying, I think these will be 2 fun matchups against other really interesting East teams in the Hornets and the Raptors ahead of the All-Star break. So I'm excited to get those 2 games in. Couple final questions here. D-Fizz, do we have enough to make a run to the finals? Here's my thing, and I said this over on Knicks Film School ahead of that Knicks game. I think they do. I have real questions. Like I have real concerns. I think they have a Eastern Conference Finals, Eastern Conference representative defense. I'm not sold the Pistons have a Eastern Conference Finals, Eastern Conference representative offense. I'm not fully sold on that they can make a run through 3 playoff series all the way to the finals with Jalen Duren as your second best offensive player. Now, if Tobias is able to turn back the clock, well, maybe we don't want him to turn back the clock because there was some rough playoff performances for Tobias. So maybe we just keep Tobias doing what he's doing. Maybe they manufacture it. Maybe we get a great, maybe Daniss Jenkins is the answer. I don't know. I think there are still flaws offensively in multiple playoff series. I'm a little nervous they're going to show up. I understand Trajan's idea of we're going to find out in the playoffs. We want to see it with this group, and then we'll adjust and decide what we need from there. I think they have a Eastern Conference Finals run defense. This is why I had the Norm Powell idea. I do have worries about an Eastern Conference Finals run offense from the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree exactly with what you said. They're going to win 40 games before they hit 20 losses. They are very firmly one of the top teams in the NBA.
Oh, Omari, they're in the same as the Thunder in the win column right now. I think they're just 2 back in the lot. Like this is team, and I think they're second in net rating by themselves. There's no question this is one of the best regular season teams in the NBA this year.
Yeah, like I feel like their turnaround has been so thorough that it's like people are still not realizing just how elite this team has been. Like they have been the second best team in the NBA this season. Any way you want to cut it, any way you want to measure it, this is the NBA's second best team. So by default, because they've dominated the East to the extent that they have, because they've beat Denver now twice, like you've got some wins that back up your regular season record. Yeah, they could make a run to the finals. If Indiana did it last year, I don't see why the Pistons can't do it this year. They have some things to overcome. Like obviously no team is perfect, but when you're just as disruptive defensively as they are, when you've got a guy like Cade who you know can perform in those moments, but you could just physically overwhelm teams, like those things can make up, offensively to an extent. I mean, it's still going to be tough, in some of those late game situations where you just need a shot. But like, how many teams in the East would you take with any confidence over the Pistons to make a run? Boston has no depth. New York, I mean, they've been winning games a little bit as of late, but the Pistons just backed them twice. And last year's series went down to the wire. One of the closest 6-game series you'll see. Like, who in the East is really threatening this team? You could bring up something for every single team in the East for a reason why they wouldn't make it. And I think the Pistons have more depth than any other team in the East. Like, they have a lot going for them. So, yes, they have enough. That doesn't mean I think that they'll get there, but I just don't necessarily see them not having that number 2 guy is like this absolutely devastating flaw that they'll always regret not filling because they've been this good without that guy. So, I don't think it's crazy to think that your 60-win team is also capable of making a postseason run.
I don't disagree. All I will say is I am worried about that. I think more than they are, while also understanding why they didn't make a move on it right now to find out. Because here's the truth, Omari. Jalen Duren might be that guy. Like that, and I'm okay with them taking this year to find out if he can go average 22 a game through an Eastern Conference playoff run as the true number 2 option. Or quite frankly, if you can just do it without, maybe they're, you can build rosters and winning rosters differently. Maybe they can just be so good defensively and so good around the margins and whatever else that they can just get it done without having that true number 2 option or the floor spacing. I have my doubts at the highest level, but I've been wrong before, and I hope I'm wrong again on this one and we see him do it. Last thing, Zach Mills, any takeaways from Trajan's press conference? I'll be honest, I read some of the quotes you put out there, but O2, you were there, you asked questions, anything you took away?
Yeah, he basically just kind of reiterated what we already do, which is like he was asked directly about the lack of second option, and it's just like we're not built like other teams. Like we've won our own way, and like midway through the season, basically he's like, I don't know if you make a trade for a guy that you have no practice time. Like he mentioned, they have 18 games in 31 days in March, so no time to really get whoever you acquire acclimated, right? And like you've just been so good defensively. I think they want to continue to lean into their strengths and see how far that defense could carry them in the playoffs, because defense does win championships. It doesn't always it doesn't always. Like I think in recent years we've seen you just can't be good off like defensively. You've got to have that shot creation as well. But it's also a copycat league, and we've seen outlier teams win championships. Like you said, Duren could get even better, a step more into that role, a bit more firmly, or you can see that type of leap from another guy. It's tough to say exactly how it plays out, but I think the bottom line for Trajan is that this team is like in its absolute best outcome this season right now. And I just don't think they saw this deadline as we need to immediately disrupt this young 60-win team. I think they see that as it supports their theory that this team as constructed can continue to exceed expectations. And then regardless of where you fall in the playoffs, you have an entire offseason to evaluate what you need. You have a whole camp, everything else to get that player worked into your lineup. So that's just their philosophy. Like, we don't know if it'll work, but like, I think overall he just came off as pretty confident and pretty secure in what they've built. And they're not looking at this past trade deadline like we just missed our only shot at winning a championship. Like, I don't think in a million years they ever imagined just 2 years into this team would be the number 1, number 2 defense winning 60 games. So they're not trying to break this up. They want to see what these guys can do on their own. And they very much see this as the beginning of a window. The window isn't this season. The window is, you've got Cade 4 more years. Like, these guys are 23, 24. The NBA is not the NFL. I think you can sustain success a little bit easier in the NBA when you've got those guys who are young. That's my opinion. That's not what Trajan said, but that's essentially where they're coming from. So he sounded secure. He sounded confident. I think they feel pretty good about what they did, and they're obviously excited and eager to see, like everybody else, how this team actually does perform in that postseason environment.
We'll end on this. Zach Mills, people talk half-court offense in playoffs. What about a suffocating defense? Richard says the defense is what pushes their ceiling. That is what I'm interested to find out. Is the defense the ceiling pusher, or is it the floor setter? And we'll see. And I'm not saying I know the answer to that. I'm not saying I disagree that the defense could be so good that it pushes their ceiling to a NBA Finals run. I do think there's a world where the defense is the floor setter, and that makes them really awesome throughout the regular season and really good in the playoffs, but maybe not enough of a ceiling to go all the way. We'll find out. Again, I'm here for it. I have no issues with what ended up happening at the deadline. I don't know what moves were or weren't on the table. I would have tried to go out and get some more scoring or more floor spacing than what they did. That's just me. But now this roster is what it is. We get to evaluate it. And at the end of the day, we're still talking NBA regular season and playoff basketball, and we're not talking about the NBA draft. So for fans that have been around for the 5 years before this, you guys should still be happy and celebrating that. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the Super Bowl, how you enjoy the Super Bowl. Have a great time with that. Just know that I will be watching NBA or college basketball while you guys do that. O2, have a safe flight, and take us away, my guy.
Absolutely. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to West Davenport as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.